My DIL said, I'm just a guest here, Dad, at Thanksgiving, so I showed her the deed. On Thanksgiving night, in the house I built with my own hands, candles flickered and 3 generations laughed until I quietly asked, Chloe, could you help me with the dishes? She spun to the room, glittering with wine and approval, and shouted, Everyone, he wants me to wash dishes. I'm just a guest here, Dad. Laughter burst like glass. My son stared at his shoes. I didn't flinch. You're right, I said, voice steady. You are a guest. I walked to my study and returned with a leather folder, set it on the table, and slid out a single page. Before we go any further, I told her, let's read the first line. She glanced down, color draining. Whose name is on the deed? I asked. Silence. Her smile died. I leaned in. Now, shall we talk about who hosts and who leaves? If you want to know what happened next, follow along and tell me where you're watching from. I bet 99% of you will hear this, sigh, and scroll past without clicking like or subscribe. Even if it only takes a second, what time is it for you? And where are you listening? The house looked like something out of a Thanksgiving magazine spread, gleaming silverware. A centerpiece of dried hydrangeas and russet leaves, candles flickering softly against the glass cabinets. Outside, the maple trees were losing their last fiery leaves. Drifting onto the lawn Frank had once raked himself every weekend. Inside, laughter floated through the air like the scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon pie. Frank adjusted his tie in the reflection of the dining room window. He had built this house 23 years ago, every inch of it, from the arch above the front porch to the oak banister he sanded by hand. Each detail still held a memory. Yet tonight, standing in the home he'd designed, he felt oddly like a guest, waiting for permission to sit. Dad! Liam's voice broke his thoughts. Could you check the faucet in the powder room? It's dripping again. Frank smiled. Of course it was. He found the leak in under 5 minutes and tightened the valve with a precision that had earned him 40 years in construction management. When he looked up, Chloe was standing in the doorway, phone in hand, snapping a photo of the gleaming marble sink. I'll post this later, she said, not looking at him. The light's perfect right now. Frank dried his hands and nodded. You know, I used to tell your husband the same thing about good timing. When the light hits, you work fast. Wise, she offered a practiced laugh. Oh, that's sweet. You two are so similar sometimes. But her tone had that polite, distant edge, like she was humoring an old man who'd wandered into his own story. By the time guests began to arrive, Chloe had transformed into the perfect hostess. Her parents walked in first, all designer smiles and crisp autumn scarves. Then came her college friends, their toddlers clutching pumpkin-shaped cookies. The dining room glowed with golden light. Frank stood to the side, pouring wine, letting everyone gush over the floral arrangements Chloe handpicked and the handmade place cards she designed herself. He recognized the handwriting his own. He'd helped Liam print them last year when Chloe forgot. As everyone settled, Chloe clinked her glass. I really want to thank everyone for coming here today, she began, her voice bright and clear. Liam and I have worked so hard to make this house our home. We are truly blessed. And there really become applause followed, gentle and approving. Frank smiled mechanically. We worked so hard. The words clung to him like smoke. She said, we, as if the house had sprung from their ambition alone, not from the blueprints he'd sketched at his old drafting table, not from the loans he'd co-signed so Liam could afford the mortgage. He caught Liam's eye. For a brief second, his son's smile faltered, a flicker of guilt. Then it was gone, replaced by another toast. To family, someone shouted. To family, Frank echoed softly. The meal began. Platters of turkey and cranberry sauce passed from hand to manicured hand. Laughter filled the air, polished and polite. Frank tried to join in, but his voice kept catching somewhere between pride and weariness. When dessert was served, Frank reached under the table and brought out a small box wrapped in brown paper. For you, Chloe, he said, smiling. It's a little something I've been saving. She gasped theatrically. Oh, Father, you didn't have to do that. Inside was a bottle of 1982 Bordeaux, one of only 3 he'd kept from his wedding anniversary collection. He'd planned to open it with Eleanor, his late wife, on their 50th, but life hadn't waited that long. Chloe hugged him tightly, too tightly. "You're the sweetest," she said. Her perfume filling his nose, expensive, floral, entirely foreign. Her embrace lingered just a moment too long, the kind that looked heartfelt in photographs, but left no warmth behind. "It's lovely," she said, placing the bottle next to the other gifts. "I'll save it for a special occasion." Frank nodded, though he knew she'd probably serve it at her next dinner party, and never mention where it came from. Throughout the evening, small details began to prick at him like tiny splinters under the skin. When she poured wine for everyone, she forgot his glass. When guests praised the wood floors, she said, "Yes, we had them refinished when we moved in," without glancing his way. Even the curtains she called handpicked were the very ones he'd chosen with Eleanor 2 decades ago. He watched Chloe glide through the room with perfect ease, her laughter chiming in all the right places. Liam stayed mostly quiet, occasionally meeting his father's gaze with an apologetic shrug, as if to say, "I know, Dad. I'm sorry. But please, not tonight." Frank forced another smile. He learned long ago that silence was sometimes the only armor a father had. After dinner, when the plates were cleared and the last of the pumpkin pie was served, Chloe raised her glass again. "To new traditions," she said, "and to building a home that reflects who we are." Frank looked around the table. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the candlelight, it all shimmered like a Norman Rockwell painting. If you didn't look too closely, it was perfect. But he did look closely. He saw how Chloe's hand brushed Liam's arm possessively, how her mother's smile lingered approvingly, how his own glass sat untouched beside his plate. It was a small thing, almost nothing, a mist pour, an overlooked gesture. Yet Frank felt a quiet fracture open inside him, delicate but definite, like the first hairline crack in fine china. He leaned back, forcing a calm breath. The biggest cracks always start from the smallest ones, he thought, and somewhere beneath the laughter, the house he'd built began to sound just a little hollow. The last of the guests drifted into the living room, wine glasses still in hand, their laughter soft and lazy, the way it gets after too much turkey and just enough wine. The fire crackled in a stone hearth, throwing a buttery light across the room. Someone put on soft jazz from Chloe's wireless speaker, and the scent of cinnamon and smoke hung in the air like the aftertaste of a long, perfect day. The dining table, however, told a different story. Plates crusted with gravy, half-eaten rolls, smudged wine glasses, and crumbs of pecan pie littered the linen tablecloth. The golden candlesticks had burned low, dripping wax down to their brass bases. Frank stood quietly at the edge of the room, watching as Chloe curled her legs under her on the couch, phone in hand, laughing at something one of her friends showed her on Instagram. Liam sat beside her, smiling faintly, his eyes glazed from wine and fatigue. Nobody looked toward the table. Old habits die hard. Frank rolled up his sleeves and began gathering plates. He wasn't thinking about anything, just moving, methodical, the way he had done after every family meal since Eleanor was alive. The sound of forks clinking on porcelain felt almost comforting, familiar. He carried a stack of plates toward the kitchen, balancing them easily on one arm. Behind him, the chatter continued. "Frank, sit down. You've done enough," his sister Martha called gently. "I'll just take this in," he said with a smile. "Otherwise, they'll harden like cement." Martha chuckled, shaking her head. But she didn't follow him. Nobody did. In the kitchen, he rinsed a few glasses, lined them on the counter, the sink filled with warm, soapy water, and steam fogged the window overlooking the dark garden. He wiped his hands on the dish towel and peeked into the living room. The scene was cozy, beautiful firelight flickering on designer sweaters, glasses glinting, the soft hum of contentment. Still, the table was a mess. He stepped quietly back into the room, stopping beside Chloe's chair. She looked radiant, perfect hair, perfect skin, her hand resting lightly on Liam's knee. "Chloe," he said softly, bending slightly so others wouldn't hear. "Can you help me with these dishes? There are too many people, it'll go faster if we do it together." It was a simple, private request. The kind of thing you say in families that still act like families. But Chloe turned her head slowly toward him, eyes gleaming like she'd just heard a funny secret. Then she straightened and, with a bright, performative laugh, said loudly, "Everyone, listen. You won't believe this. Dad just asked me if I could help wash the dishes, and I'll use this. The room froze, then rippled with polite laughter. She raised her hand dramatically. I told him, I'm just a guest here. Father, who has to work when it's a guest, right? Laughter again, louder this time, but nervous. A few of Chloe's friends chuckled, glancing around to see if it was okay to laugh. Someone refilled their drink just to have something to do. Frank stood there, motionless, the warmth draining from his face. Aunt Martha's smile disappeared. She stared into her lap. Liam rubbed the back of his neck, eyes fixed on the floor, like he suddenly discovered the fascinating grain of the hardwood. Even the fire seemed to quiet for a moment. Chloe giggled, tossing her hair. Oh, come on, Dad, don't look so serious, she added, still laughing. You know I'd probably break one of those fancy plates anyway. The group relaxed, laughter trickling back, a safe return to comfort. Frank looked down at his hands. They were strong, wide, marked with faint scars from a lifetime of honest work. The hands that had held his newborn son, sanded the beams of this house, signed the checks that built it, tightened the bolts when the plumbing failed, replaced shingles after every storm. Those same hands now looked out of place here, too rough, too real for the smooth, manicured perfection around him. He forced a small smile. You're right, he said quietly, his voice low enough that only Chloe and Liam heard. You are a guest. She laughed again, thinking it was agreement, but there was something different in his tone, something measured, metallic. He turned, carrying another stack of plates, back to the kitchen, leaving her laughter echoing behind him. As the door swung shut, the noise from the living room dimmed. The clink of glass, the hum of conversation all softened into a dull murmur. The kitchen light was harsh, cold. The plates clattered into the sink, and Frank let his hands rest on the edge of the counter, breathing slowly. For a long moment, he just stood there, staring at his reflection in the dark window. Behind him, the house glowed warmly, filled with people, but his own reflection looked like a man standing outside. He ran the tap again, rinsing soap from his fingers. The water scalded slightly, turning them pink. Dirty hands, he thought. The phrase rose up, uninvited. He remembered Eleanor once telling him, you can tell a good man by what he does when no one's watching. Well, tonight, everyone had watched, and still, he'd done what he always did. Worked, cleaned, tried to keep the peace, but something had changed. The sting of humiliation didn't fade this time. It settled deep, heavy. He dried his hands carefully, pressing the towel between his fingers like he could erase the sting. From the living room came another round of laughter, her laughter bright, effortless, echoing against the high ceilings he'd built himself. Her voice carried through the doorway. You should see his face. He looked like I just asked him to shovel snow. The gas roared again. Frank's jaw tightened. He turned off the tap, the steady rush of water giving way to silence. He looked at his hands once more, scarred, wrinkled, honest, and whispered under his breath, have you ever felt invisible in the room you built? The answer, of course, was yes. And as the laughter swelled again in the other room, he felt something shift, not break. Not yet, but shift, like the first rumble before a storm. Her laughter echoed around the house, bright and sharp as glass, turning his offer of help into a ridiculous joke. He looked down at his hands, the hands that had mixed mortar, hammered nails, and signed the check that had bought all of this. For the first time in his own home, Frank felt dirty. You're right, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even look at her. The words came out clean and level, the way a nail slides perfectly into wood when you've done this your whole life. Then I placed the stack of plates I was holding back on the table gently, precisely, like I was setting down something fragile. A few crumbs fluttered from the linen, landing on the waxy candlelight. I picked up a napkin, wiped my hands slowly, folded it once, and set it beside my plate. Then I straightened my sweater, adjusted my collar, and turned toward the hallway. No one spoke. The only sound was the soft creak of the old oak floor under my shoes. Each step echoed faintly, the way footsteps sound in a church after the service has ended. I didn't rush. I walked past the family photos lining the hallway, Liam's graduation picture, the one of Chloe in her white sundress on the porch, smiling beside the very columns I'd built myself. Every frame looked polished, untouched by dust. From behind me came the faintest, nervous laugh. "Father must be angry," Chloe said. Her voice was bright but brittle. "Old people can get sensitive. I think that is those." It was followed by a low murmur, glasses clinking, the shuffle of people exchanging glances but avoiding each other's eyes. I didn't stop. Inside my chest, something had gone very still. Not rage. Rage burns hot and loud. This was colder, cleaner. My thoughts moved like water under ice. I'd spent a lifetime teaching people that silence can fix what shouting never could. When I reached the end of the hallway, I paused at the door to my office. The brass handle gleamed softly in the half-light. I could still hear them in the living room, the half-laughter, the whispers. "Chloe," Liam said under his breath. "What did you do? Why did you say that?" She huffed, pretending not to hear. "Oh, stop it. He'll cool off. He's always so dramatic." "Dramatic?" Martha's voice cutting sharply, her words carrying above the others. "That man built this house from scratch. He started the family business with his own 2 hands. He's got nothing to be ashamed of." The room went quiet again after that. I imagined their faces, Chloe biting her lip, her parents suddenly very interested in their wine, Liam staring at the fire like he could crawl into it. I turned the doorknob slowly, feeling the familiar click. The office was dark, except for the glow from the fireplace spilling faintly down the hall. The air inside smelled of cedar and old paper. On the desk sat a half-empty glass of whiskey from earlier, a small pile of unpaid bills, and the framed photo of Eleanor smiling on our 30th anniversary, her hair pinned up, her eyes laughing at me through time. I shut the door behind me. The muffled sound of voices outside rose, quick and anxious. They thought I left the party out of pride. They didn't understand that pride had nothing to do with this. I sat down at my desk and looked around. My blueprints were still stacked in the corner, the plans for the very walls around us. Each line on those drawings was a reminder of the years I'd poured into building something that was supposed to last. "This isn't about dishes," I whispered to the empty room. "It's about respect. It's about legacy." My heartbeat slowed, steady and deliberate, matching the rhythm of my decision forming. Through the door, I heard Martha saying something again, something about gratitude, about not forgetting who gave you your start, but the rest of her words blurred into static. I stood, reaching for the drawer under the desk, the one I hadn't opened in years. My fingers brushed against the keyring hanging inside, the same key I'd used when I signed over the deed to this house to Liam. The metal was cold against my palm. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing in the stillness. Then I opened the drawer completely. From the living room came a sharp voice, Chloe's again, higher now, uneasy. "Liam, should you go check on him?" "No," she answered herself quickly. "Just let him cool off." My lips curved, not quite into a smile. They thought I was cooling off, but I wasn't leaving. I was going to get a weapon. When I opened the office door again, every conversation in the living room stopped. Even the fire seemed to dim. The air felt thick, like everyone had inhaled at once and forgotten how to breathe. I walked slowly, the weight of the old leather folder firm in my hand. It was scuffed at the corners, the brass clasp tarnished from years of use. Inside were papers that hadn't seen daylight in a long time, papers that had built this family as surely as any hammer or nail. No one moved as I approached the coffee table. Chloe was the first to break the silence. She tried to sound amused, but her voice came out higher than usual. "What are you going to do, Father? Show us your will?" She gave a forced little laugh. "It's too soon for that, Father. You're going to live to 100, remember?" I said nothing. Her laugh wavered, then died in her throat. I reached the center of the room, placed the folder on the walnut table, and flipped it open. The sound, the soft snap of aged leather, the faint rustle of paper, was the only thing anyone could hear. For a moment, I didn't look at anyone. I let the quiet stretch. The anticipation was a living thing, moving through the room like a draft. Then I slid the top page forward, a crisp, cream-colored document with the county seal embossed at the top. I turned it so it faced Chloe and pushed it gently toward her. "You said you were a guest," I said finally, my voice calm, even. I just wanted to make sure my guest knew who the real host was. Her brow furrowed, What is this? Look at the top line, Chloe. She hesitated, then leaned forward. Her manicured nails brushed the edge of the paper. Liam shifted beside her, uneasy. The fire crackled once, sharply, like punctuation. Whose name is on it? I asked. Her eyes scanned the text, moving slowly at first, then faster, then stopping altogether. The blood drained from her face. Franklin J. Whitmore. She read softly. Her voice broke on the last syllable. I watched her hand tremble slightly before she pushed the paper back toward me, as if it might burn her fingers. That can't be right, she stammered. You said you'd transferred it to us. You said you'd take care of it. I said I'd take care of the paperwork, I corrected. And I did. The murmurs started small, nervous sounds from the people who'd been laughing at her jokes an hour ago. Chloe's mother leaned forward, squinting at the page as if willing it to change. Her father coughed into his hand. Liam sat perfectly still. His face had gone pale, eyes fixed on the document as if it had rewritten the last few years of his life. Dad, he said finally, his voice barely audible. You never told us. You never asked. Martha, sitting near the fire, smiled faintly, a knowing, satisfied kind of smile that she didn't bother to hide. You should always read the fine print, she murmured. Chloe shot her a glare, her lips parting to retort, but no words came out. Around us, the atmosphere shifted like the air before a thunderstorm. The same people who had once nodded approvingly at Chloe's stories now avoided her eyes. Her friends exchanged quick glances, uncomfortable, suddenly aware that they were sitting in a house that didn't belong to the person who'd invited them. I leaned back slightly, letting the silence grow. For the first time that night, Chloe had nothing to say. She blinked rapidly, her eyes shining not from tears, but from the panic of someone realizing the ground under her feet was no longer solid. So what does this mean? She whispered. It means, I said, that everything you see here, the walls, the floors, the mortgage, the insurance, still belongs to me. The only reason you live here is because I allow it. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Frank? Liam said carefully. We just assumed. I know, I said. You assumed. That's the problem with people who think comfort is ownership. You forget who built the foundation. No one laughed this time. The fire popped again, loud and sharp, scattering sparks into the grate. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Then Chloe let out a shaky laugh, trying to salvage her pride. So what, Father? You're what, trying to teach me a lesson? I met her eyes, steady. No, I'm reminding you of the truth. I closed the folder, the snap of the clasp echoing through the room like a gavel. Chloe looked away, her cheeks flushing deep red. The smile she had worn all evening was gone, replaced by something brittle and small. Her friends shifted uncomfortably, murmuring excuses about needing to leave early. Liam's hand hovered in the air, as if he wanted to reach for me but didn't know how. The silence that followed wasn't awkward anymore. It was dense, heavy, final. It wasn't the silence of embarrassment. It was the silence of truth. Chloe might still be the landlord in her Instagram photos, all smiles and filters and perfect lighting, but on the only piece of paper that mattered, she was nothing. And I wasn't done yet. The air in the living room felt heavier than before, as if every breath carried the weight of something irreversible. The deed lay open on the coffee table like a courtroom exhibit, its county seal gleaming under the light. Nobody spoke. Even the fire, once lively, had dimmed to quiet embers. Chloe sat rigid on the couch, her fingers gripping the edge of a throw pillow. The color had drained from her face. Across from her, Liam looked between us like a man, watching the fault line of his life split in two. I stood by the table, hands steady, eyes clear. You're right, I said softly, breaking the silence. You are a guest. Her head jerked up, startled. And this guest, I continued, my tone level but stripped of any warmth, has been extremely disrespectful in my home. And as a host, I'm asking my guest to leave. Now, the words fell with the precision of a gavel. For a moment, no one moved. Then Chloe blinked rapidly, as if trying to make sense of what she'd heard. You can't be serious, she said, her voice trembling. Dad, You can't do this. This is our home. Our friends are here, our things. It's my home, I said. Everything you've touched here was built with my hands, bought with my money, and protected by my name. You wanted to play hostess? Fine, but the play is over. She looked around helplessly at her friends, the same ones who had once clapped at her jokes. None of them met her eyes. Liam, she said desperately, turning to her husband. Say something. Tell him he can't just... Dad, please, Liam interrupted, standing. His voice cracked under the strain. Don't do this. People are watching. You're humiliating us. I met his gaze. That's right, Liam. Everyone is watching, and they're seeing what happens when a man forgets who he is. He froze. I took a slow step closer. You have a choice, I said, quieter now. Either you stay in my house, as my son, or you go with your guest. But I won't live under the same roof with this kind of disrespect anymore. The words hung in the air like smoke dense, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Liam's face crumpled. His mouth opened, then closed again. I could see the boy I'd once taught to hold a hammer, to keep his word, to look a man in the eye. I could see him trying to find that version of himself now, and failing. Frank, Chloe said sharply, desperate to regain control. You're making a mistake. This isn't the kind of thing you can take back tomorrow when you calm down. I'm calm now, I said. She stood abruptly, her movements jerky. Fine. You want me gone? I'll go. But Liam's coming with me. Ingratitude and the struggle. Liam hesitated. He looked at me, then at her. The pause stretched painfully long. Even the guests seemed to hold their breath. Son, I said, my voice softer now, not pleading but final. You can rebuild a life anywhere. But if you walk out that door with her tonight, you'll do it without my name, without my help, and without my respect. The words struck harder than any shout could have. Chloe tugged at his sleeve. Liam, let's go. Or thank you. He looked at me one last time, his eyes red, full of apology I didn't need. Then he nodded faintly and turned away. Together, they walked to the door. The guests parted silently, creating a narrow path between them. Chloe kept her head high, but her hands trembled as she reached for her coat. When the door opened, the cold night air rushed in. A gust of wind flickered the flames in the fireplace and scattered the papers on the table. Liam, I called quietly. He turned halfway. Remember, I said, it takes years to build something worth keeping and seconds to let someone else destroy it. He didn't answer. The door closed behind them with a hollow click. And then silence. Not the tense, suffocating silence from earlier. This was different. It was deep, wide, peaceful. The kind of silence that follows a verdict when the truth has finally been spoken aloud. Martha exhaled first. Well, she said softly, that was overdue. No one else spoke. The guests began to leave quietly, coats pulled tight, eyes lowered. Within minutes, the room was empty again. I stood alone beside the coffee table, the deed still lying open. I ran my hand across the paper, then folded it back into the leather folder and set it aside. The house creaked gently, settling. The air smelled faintly of pine, smoke, and something else, something cleaner. My eyes drifted to the dining table, still covered in dirty plates and empty glasses. For the first time that day, I smiled. I rolled up my sleeves and walked toward the kitchen. The faucet squeaked as I turned it on. Warm water gushed over my hands, rinsing away the traces of the evening. I would wash the dishes myself, because this was my house. The first morning after Thanksgiving was the quietest one I'd had in years. The house felt unnaturally, still no thudding footsteps from upstairs, no morning TV echoing from the living room, no smell of Chloe's oversweet vanilla candles clashing with my coffee, just silence. I stood in the kitchen, mug in hand, watching sunlight crawl across the oak floors. I'd refinished myself. The clock ticked softly on the wall. It was so calm that I almost didn't recognize it as peace. It felt more like the pause after an earthquake, when you're not sure if the ground will stay still. I sipped my coffee and looked at the two empty chairs across the table. One had always been Liam's. The other, for a while, had been Chloe's bright throw pillow, half-drunk smoothie, her phone always buzzing with some new notification. Now both were empty. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Instead, I just felt aware. Every sound, water dripping from the faucet, the low hum of the refrigerator sounded louder than it used to. By mid-morning, I decided to go out. The house didn't need air, it needed distance. The upscale market on Main was bustling. Thanksgiving leftovers were still being discussed in every aisle. I was reaching for a bunch of kale when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Oh, Frank, what a Thanksgiving to remember." I turned. Mrs. Gable, the neighbor from 3 houses down, stood smiling at me too wide, too polished. Her shopping cart was full of imported cheese and gossip. "Mrs. Gable," I greeted, polite but curt. She leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough to make sure everyone nearby could still hear. Poor Chloe. She must be devastated. She was just joking, you know. Young people these days, they don't mean harm. Her eyes, though, weren't sympathetic. They glittered with glee, the way people's eyes do when tragedy isn't theirs. "I'm sure she'll survive," I said evenly, moving toward the self-checkout. She called after me. Of course, of course." Such a misunderstanding. Still, everyone's talking about how brave you were to stand your ground. I didn't answer. I just smiled thinly and scanned my groceries. Outside, the air was crisp, clean, and biting. I loaded the bags into my truck and sat behind the wheel for a while, letting the silence wrap around me. The neighborhood was already humming with whispers I knew. Our family's Thanksgiving had become its own suburban myth, half tragedy, half tabloid fodder. When I got home, there was a voicemail waiting on the answering machine. "Martha." "Frank, go check Facebook." Her voice barked through the speaker. "One of Chloe's friends just posted something about overbearing fathers who can't let go of control. It's already got 50 likes. 50, can you believe it? They're turning her into some kind of martyr." I deleted the message. Let them talk. Gossip dies quicker when you stop feeding it. By afternoon, I turned my attention back to something tangible, the house itself. The first thing to go were Chloe's decorations. The gold-framed live, laugh, love signs, the artificial succulents, the crystal figurines shaped like swans. I boxed them neatly and carried them to the garage. Then I opened the curtains, letting real sunlight pour in. On the shelves, I replaced her Instagram-ready decor with my old books, a few framed blueprints, and a photo of Liam as a boy 7 years old, holding a toy hammer, grinning through a missing tooth. I paused, thumb brushing over the glass. I wasn't punishing my son, I told myself quietly. I was trying to save him. But man, it hurt. I exhaled, set the frame back, and turned on the stereo. Ella Fitzgerald's voice filled the house soft, low, imperfect, in the best way. For the first time in years, I could actually hear the music. As I straightened the room, my eyes drifted to the office door, the same one I'd closed that night. Something tugged at me to go inside. The space smelled faintly of cedar and paper. I started clearing the clutter off the desk, old bills, spare screws, the odd receipt. Then I noticed a cardboard box tucked behind the filing cabinet, half hidden. Liam's handwriting was scrawled across the top, tags and house docs. I sat down, pulling it toward me. Most of it was boring utility bills, warranty papers, junk mail. I started stacking them into neat piles. But then, wedged between 2 envelopes, I found a glossy, unfamiliar bank statement. The logo wasn't from our usual bank. It was from an online investment firm I'd never heard of. The numbers on the page looked odd. Multiple transfers, small but frequent, all going to an account under Chloe's name. At first, I almost tossed it in the shred pile. Probably some side account for her boutique business, I thought. But something about it didn't add up. My gut tightened, that old instinct from my years as an engineer whispering at me. When something looks too neat, it's hiding something. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the numbers again. Outside, the evening light turned golden, spilling through the window and catching the dust in the air. I could still hear Mrs. Gable's sugary voice in my head. Poor Chloe, she didn't mean harm. Maybe not. But harm has a way of disguising itself in charm and polish. I closed the statement slowly, slid it into a separate folder, and set it aside on the desk. The house was quiet again, but this time, the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the air right before a new crack appears in the wall. I was organizing my office when I found that old box of documents Liam had left behind. Most of it was unimportant papers, but stuck in the middle was that strange-looking bank statement. I was going to throw it away, but my engineer's intuition told me that sometimes the most serious problems are hidden behind seemingly innocuous numbers. I bet 99% of you will hear this, sigh, and scroll past without clicking like or subscribe. Even if it only takes a second, what time is it for you and where are you listening? The first real winter storm hit that week, bringing with it the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and stays. I spent most of my evenings by the fire, nursing coffee, and staring at the strange bank statement I'd found in Liam's old box. It wasn't a single document, it was a pattern. Transfers, withdrawals, online purchases under Chloe's name, luxury boutiques in Manhattan, spa chains in Los Angeles, a $4,200 charged to a brand management consultant. Then, hidden among them, a recurring payment to a private investment account, one that didn't belong to either of them. I traced the numbers, my old engineer's instincts kicking in. They formed a story, one written in decimals and timestamps. Deception, vanity, waste. For every small deposit into their joint account, there were 2 withdrawals under Chloe's login. The math didn't just speak, it screamed. Still, I didn't feel angry, just tired. If I learned anything from years of managing construction budgets, it's that damage always starts small. You ignore a hairline crack, and soon you're standing in the ruins wondering how it happened. 2 weeks later, I went into the city to meet an old friend, Harold, my former business partner. We always met at the same place, Giovanni's Trattoria, the Italian restaurant where Eleanor and I had celebrated our anniversary every year before she passed. The maitre d' still greeted me by name, leading me to a quiet corner table. The restaurant looked the same as ever: white tablecloths, soft jazz, dim amber light that made everything and everyone seem a little more forgiving. I was halfway through my appetizer when I heard a familiar voice, sharp, rising just above the low hum of conversation. "Liam, I told you we don't have enough money for this place." It was Chloe. I froze. Slowly, I turned my head. At a table by the window, not 20 feet away, sat my son and daughter-in-law. Chloe's posture was perfect, as always, but her voice betrayed the edge beneath it. Liam sat across from her, shoulders slumped, tie loosened. The candlelight between them flickered like it, too, was afraid to stay. He leaned forward, whispering harshly, "You're the one who wanted to come here. You said we needed to save face with your friends." Her nails tapped against her wineglass. "Do you think I wanted to be seen eating at some cheap diner? People talk, Liam. They notice." "I'm noticing the bill," he muttered, "and I'm the one paying it." All directly in clicked. When the waiter brought the check, Chloe reached into her purse with exaggerated grace and pulled out a sleek gold credit card. I saw her flash that practice smile, the same one she used to charm guests at my house. The waiter disappeared with the card. A few minutes passed. Then he returned, his expression politely strained. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Your card was declined." Chloe's head snapped up. "That's impossible. Try it again." He hesitated. I did, twice. Bye. Around them, conversation dimmed. Diners pretended not to notice, but their glances betrayed them, those quick, sidelong looks people give when something uncomfortable happens nearby. Liam rubbed his temples, muttering, "I told you." Chloe shot him a look that could have cut glass. "Do something." He sighed, pulled out his debit card, and handed it to the waiter. His ears burned crimson. The waiter nodded quickly and retreated. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Then, as if on cue, Chloe straightened her back and lifted her chin. Her voice regained that brittle cheerfulness. "Well," she said too loudly, "that was embarrassing for them, wasn't it?" Liam didn't answer. She reached for her glass, her hand trembling slightly, and drained the rest of her wine. When she finally set the glass down, her eyes drifted across the room straight to me. For a moment, she froze. Then her expression hardened. No shame, no apology, only blame. Her gaze said everything her pride wouldn't let her speak. "This is your fault." I didn't look away. I just held her eyes, and took a slow sip of my coffee. Liam noticed me a second later. His face went pale. For a moment, just a moment, our eyes met, and I saw something flicker there. Not anger, not defiance, just a quiet, exhausted regret. The waiter returned with the receipt, mumbling thanks. Liam signed it quickly, shoved the pen back, and stood. "Let's go," he said. Chloe hesitated, then rose with her usual posture, her chin high as if she still owned the place. She looped her arm through his, gripping his sleeve tightly. They walked past my table without a word, but just before they reached the door, Liam turned. His eyes met mine again, and for a split second, I saw the boy who once ran to me crying after falling off his bike. The one who used to trust me to fix what was broken. Then Chloe tugged his hand sharply, and that look vanished, replaced by the dull resentment of a man who no longer knew where home was. I watched them step out into the cold, their breath visible in the glass reflection of the window. Their ship was sinking, and instead of looking for a life preserver, my daughter-in-law was too busy trying to find someone to blame. That night, back home, I opened the folder on my desk again. The numbers on that bank statement felt heavier now, more urgent. Whatever was going on with their money, it wasn't just carelessness. It was something darker, and I needed to know what. The December rain came quietly that morning, thin and persistent, threading across the window pane like a metronome marking time. I was in my office, surrounded by the quiet order I rebuilt over the past month, the hum of the desk lamp, the low crackle of the fire, the scent of old paper and cedar polish. On the desk lay two neat stacks, the legitimate household bills on one side, and on the other, a growing pile of evidence, copies of bank transfers, expense summaries, and Chloe's signature where it didn't belong. I spent nights tracing every line item, every number, until the story was unmistakable. They weren't just careless. They were drowning in debt, and she'd been hiding it. That's when the phone rang. The old landline, not the cell. The sound startled me more than it should have. I stared at the receiver for a second before answering. "Dad?" It was Liam. His voice was hoarse, trembling. There was something rehearsed in its rhythm, though a false note, the way people sound when they've practiced their pain. "Liam," I said, "it's been a while." "Yeah." He cleared his throat. I wanted to call earlier, but I didn't know what to say. "Then I'd say starting with the truth might be a good idea." Silence stretched. I could hear faint background noise, traffic maybe, or a television murmuring somewhere far off. Then, softly, "Dad, I'm sorry. About everything." His words came slowly, like they'd been handed to him one at a time. "Chloe's sorry too. She's been crying for weeks now. She realizes how wrong she was." I leaned back in my chair, studying the ceiling. Crying? Chloe? The same woman who had stared me down in that restaurant 2 weeks ago, her eyes sharp as glass, her voice slicing through her husband's apology like a whip? No, that woman didn't cry. That woman planned. This was a performance. And my son, poor Liam, was the reluctant lead actor. I let the silence hang long enough for him to get nervous. It worked. "Dad," he said finally, "are you still there?" "I'm here," I said evenly. "Keep going." He hesitated. "We've been having a tough time lately. Chloe's been trying to make things right. She misses you. We both do." The background noise shifted. A faint whisper female, sharp, deliberate, murmured something too soft to catch. Then Liam spoke again, his voice tighter, as if repeating lines fed to him through an earpiece. "Actually, there's another reason I'm calling. Chloe's been working on this business idea, Dad. A real one this time. An online home decor store, something that combines her eye for design with the kind of structure you know about. She even came up with the name Havencraft." He paused, waiting for approval. I gave him none. "She's really passionate about it," he continued quickly. "She's even made mock-ups, hired a photographer almost hired one, and we've got friends willing to help promote it. It's just, we're a little short on startup capital." There it was. The hook. The voice in the background whispered again, faster this time, more urgent. Liam's tone grew defensive, then pleading. "I thought maybe you could help us. Not as a gift, of course. As an investment. We want to prove to you that we've changed, that we're serious now. We just need a chance to start over." I said nothing. The silence stretched long enough that I could almost hear his pulse over the line. Dad? I'm listening, I said, my voice measured. Look, I know you don't trust us right now. I get it. But if you could just meet with us, let us show you the plan. I think you'd see it's solid. Chloe's really... Stop, I said. The word landed quietly, but hard enough to stop him mid-sentence. Liam, I continued, I know that voice behind you. I can practically hear her holding the cue cards. Do me a favor, tell her to put them down. They're not helping. He went silent. I heard a shuffle, something like a hand covering the receiver, muffled whispering, then his voice again, nervous and thin. Dad, please. This isn't what you think. Oh, I think it's exactly what I think, I said calmly. You're calling because you're broke, and because she told you I'm the one with the lifeboat, and she's right about that part. What she doesn't understand is that I don't throw lifelines to people who keep poking holes in the hole. I look up. Dad, please, he said again, this time truly desperate. We just need one chance. You always said people can start over. You told me that when I messed up in college, remember? I do, I said quietly. And what I also told you was that starting over means doing the work yourself. He was quiet again. Then, softly, we'll pay you back. I could hear her in the background again, frustrated now, muttering something like, stick to the plan. I sighed. All right, Liam, I said finally. Let's do this properly. There was a pause. Then, incredulous. You mean, you'll help us? I didn't say that. But, I said, bring me the business plan. The full plan. The numbers, the projections, the sourcing, everything. I want to review it here, in person. Then we'll talk about whether I'm interested. He exhaled, shaky, relieved. Thank you, Dad. You won't regret it. Oh, I won't, I said. He missed the tone. Chloe will be so happy, he said. She wanted to call you herself, but she thought you'd hang up. She was right, I said. He tried to laugh, but it came out strangled. We'll put it all together this week. Maybe come by Saturday? We'll bring lunch? That's fine, I said. Saturday at noon. Thanks, Dad. Really, you won't regret it. I already said that part. I reminded him, then hung up before he could say anything else. For a moment, I just sat there, listening to the soft hum of the phone line going dead. The rain outside had grown heavier, drumming steadily against the window. They were playing the only card they had left, repentance wrapped in a business proposal. It was clever, in its way, but cleverness built on deceit was like scaffolding without bolts. It always collapsed under its own weight. I stood, poured myself another cup of coffee, and stared out into the rain. In the fireplace, the logs hissed softly, smoke curling up like breath. Liam's voice had sounded broken, but behind it, I could hear her the faint, sharp whisper of a prompter feeding him lines, shaping his every word. They didn't need help. They needed an investor for their next performance. And I just bought myself a front row ticket. Saturday came gray and heavy, the kind of winter day that made even confident people speak softer. I set the office as I always did for serious conversations. Blinds tilted to let in the measured light. The desk cleared except for a legal pad, 2 pens, and the old leather folder now full of documents that did not forgive. The fire in the living room whispered through the door like a reminder to keep my voice level. At noon sharp, they arrived. Chloe went first, heels precise, hair smoothed into glossy armor, a sleek CEO black dress with a camel coat folded over her arm. She held a glossy bound deck under her hand the way a lawyer handles a closing argument. Liam followed 2 paces behind, tie too tight, eyes tired. He looked like a man who'd learned to read smoke. Father, Chloe said brightly, as if the last month had been a misunderstanding we could correct with bullet points. Thank you for meeting with us. I gestured to the 2 leather chairs across from me. Have a seat. She did not sit so much as stage herself. She placed the bound document in the center of the desk, turned it to face me, and touched the corner with 2 fingers. Havencraft, she announced, as though unveiling a building. An online home decor platform focused on attainable luxury curated looks, small batch makers, dropship logistics. We own the aesthetic. We never touch inventory. I didn't reach for the deck. Go on. She flicked open the first page. Professional. Photos, mock-ups, mood boards with careful beige. We can launch lean. With an initial investment of just $50,000, we'll build a Shopify storefront, lock in 3 influencer partnerships, and begin with 5 capsule rooms holiday, modern farmhouse, coastal, mid-century, and classic. We break even in 6 months. In a year, we're profitable. She smiled. This is an opportunity not to be missed, Father. It was almost admirable. The performance, the voice, the posture, the careful use of we. If I hadn't seen the numbers that told another story, I might have believed she believed herself. I let the room breathe. Liam's knee bounced. Chloe kept her eyes on me the way people keep their gaze on a jewelry. Impressive, I said at last. Liam exhaled. But incomplete. Her smile held, but her fingers tightened on the edge of the deck. Incomplete how? I slid my leather folder onto the desk and opened it. Not the business plan, my plan. There are a few expenses you forgot to account for, I said, my voice even. Like the $30,000 debt from a certain LLC, Chloe Chic Designs LLC, that filed Chapter 7 last year. I tapped the stamped page. You didn't tell Liam about that, did you? For the first time, Chloe blinked. That was an old thing. A misunderstanding with a vendor. It's closed. It's not closed to the people you owe, I said. And it isn't closed to a potential investor. I lifted the next sheet. Nor is a first-class airfare to Bali billed as product sourcing, or the 4 designer handbags recorded as samples, all paid with a credit card opened in Liam's name. Liam turned sharply, his mouth parting. What? Chloe didn't turn to him. That's ridiculous. It's documented, I said, laying down the credit card application with his name, her email, a P.O. box for billing, and a signature that looked a lot like her practiced cursive. If you want, we can call the issuer and put them on speaker. Frank, come on, she said, the rehearsed warmth thinning. Travel and samples are standard in retail. In a company that exists, I said. In a company that breaks even on paper and hemorrhages cash in life. The forensic accountant I hired, I tapped a neat summary sheet, follow the money. He traced your business expenses to a private investment account, the same account on this statement. Maybe for a band. Sivri. I slid forward the bank page I'd found in Liam's box, now annotated with the accountant's notes. Her eye flicked to the familiar logo, then to the recurring transfers, then to the beneficiary name. She went still. Who is John Avail? I asked quietly. Chloe's jaw tightened so fast it looked painful. A consultant? For what? I asked. Brand management? I caught him. He manages brands the way a drain manages water. Liam took the page like it might burn him. His eyes ran down the numbers, then landed on the beneficiary name. He blinked hard, as if the letters might rearrange themselves if he wished it. Chloe, who is Jonah? A consultant, she said again, too quickly. He was helping with the launch. He lives in Austin, I said. He has a motorcycle he can't afford, a studio creative space, and an Instagram full of work trips that happen to match your charges. Bali, Napa, New York. He also has rent paid 3 months in advance from an account tied to her email. Liam looked from the paper to her. Tell me that isn't true. She laughed without sound a single exhale. You're unbelievable. Your father waves a few papers and you... These aren't a few papers, I said. I set down a neat stack. The bankruptcy filing, the credit application, the bank transfers, the landlord's emailed receipt. I placed last. A printout of text from a backup. Chloe thought she'd deleted the ones the investigator recovered from her cloud. They were banal, ordinary in the worst way, affection carved into logistics. Liam's hand shook as he took them. He read in silence. Then he stopped reading at all. The room changed temperature. You opened the card in my name, he said, not looking up. No trace of anger, just fact, trying to find its own voice. You ran up. What is this? $98,000? And you send money to... Don't be dramatic, Chloe snapped. A crack in the veneer at last. It's not like I bought a car. It's business. And you knew about the card. I didn't, he said, still staring at the numbers. I didn't. You signed the application? She shot back. No, I said, and slid forward the application again, side by side with a copy of Liam's driver's license. He didn't. You did. You're a very good forger Chloe, but not good enough to change the spacing in a man's signature that I've watched 1,000 times. Her eyes snapped to mine. You had no right to. I had every right to protect my son, I said, and I didn't raise my voice when I said it. The day you stood in my house and called yourself a guest, you forgot there are hosts who know how to lock a door. The room went very quiet. Chloe inhaled, smoothed her hair, and reached almost gently for the deck she'd brought. She closed it, aligning the corners like alignment could reverse gravity. This is all very dramatic, she said, aiming for calm, finding eyes. But it's between me and my husband. Which part? I asked. The bankruptcy you hid, the debt in his name, or the man you paid with that debt? Liam made a small sound, like something heavy had settled on his chest. He looked up at me. For the first time in months, his face resembled the boy who used to hold out broken things and ask if I could fix them. I'm sorry, he said. It wasn't for me. It was for the world that didn't look like he thought it did. I nodded once. Chloe turned to him at last. Liam, listen to me. Your father is. He hates that we're building something without him. He's always needed to control. Chloe, he said, and the way he said her name made her flinch. Stop. And, maid, she opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. We can fix this, she said, moving to the language of bargaining with someone who has stopped bartering. We pivot. We cut costs. You lied, he said, and there was no volume in it, no rage, only a clarity that had taken too long to arrive. You lied about money. You lied about him. He touched the printout with 2 fingers as if it might explode. You lied about everything. She looked at me then, hatred clear as glass. It was simpler to hate me than to look down at what she built. I gathered the documents back into their stack, squared the edges, and set a final envelope on top. This, I said, is the second contract. She frowned. What contract? Not a deed, I said, though the words sat easily in my mouth. A fraud and identity theft complaint, pre-drafted. Names, amounts, exhibits, sworn statements. If I file it Monday morning, the bank will freeze the card accounts. The DA will have questions. The landlord will too. So will your consultant. Chloe's face went colorless. You wouldn't. I would prefer not to, I said. I would prefer you sign the paper beneath it, acknowledgement of debt. You assume full liability for the $98,000. You absolve Liam of any responsibility. You agree to a repayment schedule and to cease and desist from using his identity in any financial transaction. Then you leave my house permanently, and you do not contact my son except through counsel. She laughed once, ugly. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you the only exit that doesn't involve a uniform, I said. Liam didn't speak. He just kept looking at her like a man trying to recognize a language he's spoken for years. Chloe stared at the envelope as if it might bite. She looked toward the door, toward the window, toward anywhere there might be a script. There wasn't one. So that's your plan, she said finally. Humiliate me, make me sign away my life. No, I said. And the truth was flat, simple. My plan was to tell the truth out loud. Minutes gathered themselves. The house creaked, a winter sound. Somewhere outside, a car passed and the air shivered back to stillness. Then Chloe reached for the pen. Her hand hovered a breath above the page, then pulled back. I want a lawyer. You should have wanted one before you signed his name, I said. Take the weekend. Monday at 9, I file. Or I tap the acknowledgement, you sign. Your choice. She stood abruptly, the chair legs scraping the rug. Liam, we're leaving. When he didn't move, she said it again, lower. Now. He rose slowly. Not to leave, but to step away from her. He set the printouts down like you set down glass. Go, he said. The word startled even him. She stared, waiting for the old obedience. It didn't come. Finally, she grabbed her deck, her coat, her certainty, and left heels sharp on the hall. The front door opening to winter and closing on a life. We didn't speak for a long time. When the silence had found its shape, Liam sat back down. He pressed a knuckle to the inside corner of his eye like a man rearranging himself from the inside out. You hired a private investigator, he said. A forensic accountant, I said. And a PI. He nodded. Thank you. Cash, oh? We listened to the house hold itself up. You'll still have to rebuild, I said, not unkindly. The debt won't vanish, but it will be hers, not yours. He nodded again. His voice was rough when he spoke. I thought I knew her. We all think that, I said, until the paperwork tells us otherwise. He almost smiled at that almost. When Truth finally finished walking around the room, the silence it left behind was more frightening than a confession. Liam looked at the door his wife had just closed, and then at the papers, and then at me, not with love, not yet, but with the clean disgust of a man who has realized he has slept beside a stranger. The curtain had fallen. Now the actors would pay the price. I bet 99% of you will hear this, sigh, and scroll past without clicking like or subscribe, even if it only takes a second. What time is it for you, and where are you listening? The house was still trembling from the echo of the slammed door. Chloe's perfume lingered in the hallway, sharp and artificial, the last trace of a woman who had mistaken cruelty for power. She's gone, I said quietly. Liam sat with his head in his hands. His voice, when it came, was small. You think this fixes anything? No, I said, but it ends the pretending. He lifted his face, pale and older than it had been that morning. I don't even know who I am without her. Then you're about to find out, I told him. That's the good part of losing what's false. You get to start over with what's real. For a while, we sat in silence. Outside, the afternoon light faded into that soft winter gray that made every shadow seem honest. Finally, I spoke. Liam, I said, the life you and she chased, it was paper wealth, flash without foundation. Your mother and I built everything we had with work, not show. That's our legacy. Integrity, not marble countertops. You lost that for a while, but you can still find it. He nodded slowly. I don't deserve another chance. No, I said. You don't. But you need one. I went to the drawer and took out a small key on a plain silver ring. It's not for this house, I said, placing it in his palm. It's for an apartment on Hawthorne Avenue, second floor. It's small, but it's yours. First month's paid. After that, it's on you. He looked down at the key like it might vanish. You planned this? I did. The day you called, I knew you'd have to fall before you stood up again. His throat worked as he swallowed. I'll pay you back. No, I said gently. You'll pay it forward. Start clean. No lies, no easy money. He gave a small laugh that sounded like a crack turning into a door. I don't know where to start. Start by calling the bank, I said. Face the mess. Do the work. One bill at a time. You fix a life the same way you fix a house. Strip it down to what still holds. He nodded, then looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years, something like respect, but humbler. You're still my dad, he said. Always, I said. But you have to be your own man now. In they sinks every single. We boxed a few of his things, a jacket, a photo of his mother, the hammer I'd given him when he first worked beside me in the shop. By the time he was ready to leave, dusk had settled. The world outside was clean and cold. At the front door, I handed him the box. This is your beginning, I said. He nodded, eyes bright. Thanks, Dad. He drove off slowly, the taillights shrinking into the dark. I stood there until they disappeared, then turned back inside. The house was quiet again, not empty, just honest. In the kitchen, I poured myself a cup of coffee and walked to the window. The garden was still. The maple branches, bare now, moved gently in the wind. For the first time in months, I didn't feel angry, or tired, or even proud. I just felt peace. My legacy wasn't this house, or the money in the bank, or the name on any deed. It was the man my son might yet become, the one who would build something of his own from nothing but truth. I turned off the light, locked the door, and stood there a moment with my hand on the knob. Then I closed it softly, finally, completely.